20 seconds past 2 p.m. and today is June 8th, 2023. This is a meeting of the Board of Trustees of Weatherford College. Today is Thursday. It's 2 p.m. as I said, or thereabouts. We're in the community room of the Emerging Technologies and Workforce Building located at 225 College Park Drive, Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, to consider and act on the posted agenda. And we do have a quorum, and I appreciate everybody being here today. We'll move through the agenda quickly, I'm sure. First item on the agenda is call to order, and I've just done that. We'll ask Mr. Baker to give the invocation, and then we'll stand and I'll lead everybody in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, thank you, sir. Please bow with me. Lord, we thank you for another month, another day. We know every gift is from you. We thank you for the rain you gave us recently. We thank you for the success of our students and the new students you're bringing us this summer and for the fall. Please be with our board as they deliberate and help them redeem the time with their families and their businesses. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, public comment for individuals not on the agenda. Ms. Worley.
We have none today.
How are you today, ma'am?
I'm Trish.
Thank you. Going to agenda item number 3, election of board and trustee officers 2023-25. President Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to congratulate Trustee Leila Morris, Trustee G.B. Bailey, and Trustee Doug Dowd for their re-election for 6-year terms. And in accordance with policy BCA legal, at this time I would recommend that the Board of Trustees elect or re-elect a chair, vice chair, and secretary to serve from today, June 8th, 2023, until the next Board of Trustees election.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we elect the following slate of officers for the Weatherford College Board of Trustees. Leila Morris as secretary, Doug Dowd as vice chair, and Dan Carney as chair.
Thank you. I second that motion. Any other comments? All in favor, raise your right hand. Dr. Marlette, thank you, sir. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Hey, we need to
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Golf clap?
Well, I'm new at this, so I don't expect it to go as smoothly as it always has when Mr. Smith was running it. So we'll just go forward from here and see how it turns out. I see the next item on the agenda is the President's report. Dr. Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Weatherford College Board of Trustees, I would like to give a few brief recognitions, employee notices, and an employee update, an enrollment update, excuse me. Recognitions. Congratulations to Coach Jeff Lightfoot, his assistant coaches, and the entire Coyote baseball team on completing the best season in WC history. The Coyotes won the conference championship, the regional tournament, and advanced to the World Series, finishing 3rd in the nation. First baseman Robin Villeneuve won the national home run title and set a WC record with 28 home runs. Go Coyotes!
I just want to take a moment to make a comment. I was privileged to be there for much of that tournament, and I could not have been prouder of our team, our players, and our town, and the way they performed and represented us in that tournament. I'm so happy to be a part of this organization and for them to be a part of this school.
I would also like to say one thing, just for Brent Baker and Dave Cowley on the radio, and how great a job they
Yes,
did.
sir.
Mr. Baker shared with me that on Memorial Day on the Coyote app, we had 27,000 listeners. Is that right? Or
17.
17,000 listeners on the Coyote app that day. So great job to all involved. Dr. Hae-Young Song, master pianist and artist in residence at Weatherford College, has been selected for induction to the Steinway & Sons Teacher Hall of Fame. She is invited to attend an early October induction ceremony at the historic New York Steinway factory. Our WC Fine Arts program continues to excel. The National Fast Pitch Coaches Association has recognized 11 Weatherford College Coyote softball players as NFCA All-American Scholar Athletes for maintaining a grade point average of 3.5 or higher for the 2022-23 academic year. The same discipline that leads to success on the competition surfaces leads to success in the classroom and in life. WC Rodeo coach Johnny Emmons and 3 WC Rodeo students are headed to the College Nationals Finals Rodeo next week in Casper, Wyoming. This is the 19th consecutive appearance for the WC Rodeo team at the CNFR. Employee notices. DMAC Local requires the college president to provide the names of contract employees that have resigned since the last board meeting. We have had no resignations to report since the last board meeting. Enrollment update. The enrollment report as of Monday, June 5th was 1,748 students enrolled in the summer sessions compared to 1,563 students year to date. That represents an 11.6 increase of 185 students. With enrollment ongoing, we currently have 1,578 students enrolled for the fall 2023 semester compared to 1,387 students year to date. That represents a 13.7% increase of 191 students. Mr. Chair, that concludes the President's report.
Thank you, Dr. Farmer. Item number 5 on the agenda is the consent agenda and financial reports. There are items A through L listed there, which have been posted for consideration. Are there any comments or questions from anyone on the board about any of those items? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Appears to be unanimous. We will move on to item number 6, consideration and possible action, resolutions authorizing method of procurement on construction, delegation of authority, and delegees selections of committee on Coyote Village re-roofing project number RFP-10-23. Dr. Cantrell.
We are recommending at this time as required that we choose the type of procurement method, and that's the competitive sealed bids. We've had drawings done up by architects. It's a couple months, 2 or 3 months ago, we sustained pretty good hail damage. So besides that, the roof is 20 years old, I believe. So it was just about time to replace it. But we will be receiving some insurance funding, not all of it, but most of it. So at this time, I'd like to recommend that we use competitive sealed bids proposal, and that the delegation of authority and selection of the committee be given to Dr. Todd Allen Farmer, and then he will nominate those.
Can I have
Sure.
a question? Are we going to replace it with the exact same material and roof?
Yes, I
Okay.
believe so.
If I may, we haven't had time to talk about that.
Oh, okay,
I think
I'm
we
sorry.
may consider some other options there to match the roof that's going to be on the new dorm across the street, so that our roofs are uniform there. But I'll
Okay.
get back with her on the type of bid. We, Dr. Marlette may recall a couple years ago, we had a hailstorm up at the Wise County campus and replaced the roof with matching roofs for the workforce building and the academic building there, and it turned out very nicely.
So you're asking for approval of procurement of to do
The
this?
type of procurement, it's required by law that you choose in advance what type of procurement method. Before we get into solicitation and all that, we have to have that.
Any other questions or comments about this? Do I have a motion to approve this resolution that's been presented here today? And Mr. Curley, do I need to be any more specific than what I just said?
It's in your packets, and so what you've done is sufficient.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. A second? Dr. Marlett? Okay. All in favor? Raise your hand, please. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Item number 7 goes President Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a new item to our ongoing reports, which is going to be an update for our WCWC campus. That's been provided to you in the written format, and you will see that every time we meet as part of your packet. And we have our executive dean here with us, should you have any follow-up questions on that. Moving to item 7B, the proposed budget. Dr. Cantrell and her team have been working very hard on that. The budget is always a complex situation with many, many variables, but this year it's even more challenging because of House Bill 8 and all of the uncertainty surrounding how House Bill 8 will impact funding specifically here at Weatherford College. And so Dr. Cantrell is going to delay her formal presentation until we know a little bit more about that. Dr. Cantrell has been attending a conference this week in Fort Worth to learn more about that and is on top of the issue. Dr. Cantrell, do you have anything you'd like to add to inform the board about that at this time?
House Bill 8 is on the governor's desk right now. It has not been signed, but it was very approved by both the House and the Senate with very large numbers supporting it. It's, as they described it this morning, a historic financing change. They do not have the rules of how it's going to be applied. They said they're writing them as we speak. It said we're under a emergency rulemaking instead of the normal rulemaking, which is 9 months to a year. And we informed the lady that's the head of the committee at the co-board this morning that our budget year starts September 1st. And she was a little bit surprised, I think. And so it's going to be a struggle to get those numbers. They said the first run that they will have for us, they have had a committee that's been recommending things back and forth, but they'll be starting to write rules now. And so the first date that they would even throw out is July the 14th. And so it's going to be a struggle, and basically...
That didn't give you much time.
No, and to... I got a hold of a run Monday night that you just don't quite understand what all the points are talking about. And so it could involve tax rates and a lot of other things. So we've got that ahead of us in August. So it's going to be difficult and it's going to take hands on board.
Well, I thank you and your team for staying on top of that very complex issue, so thank you. That brings us to agenda item 7C, our crisis management and active shooter presentation by Chief Bigg. You know, we do many, many important things here at Weatherford College, but nothing is more important than the safety of our students, faculty, staff, and all of our stakeholders. And Chief Bigg and his team do an absolutely tremendous job of coordinating not only between and among themselves, but with all of our agencies throughout the city and the county and the region. And so, Chief Bigg, thank you for all you do. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Farmer, and I'd like to thank the board for inviting me to come speak to you today. I'll admit I'm a little nervous. To kind of build on what Dr. Farmer just said, keeping our students safe is our highest priority, and it's no coincidence that I'm up here talking to you today. I realize that the last time I spoke to you was in the wake of the Uvalde situation, and now I'm up here talking to you in the wake of a similar situation in Allen, Texas. I want to assure you, as you'll see, that we've been doing a lot since the last time I talked to you. If I ever come up here and you ask me to talk about active shooter and I say I really don't have anything to report other than what I told you about last time, that's the time to start looking for a new police chief. This is a series, it's a process of constant improvement. We will never get to the point where I can come to you and say, we are now ready to handle an active shooter, because you can never truly be ready for that. But if we keep improving, my expectation is that year after year, If you keep inviting me back to talk to you like this, I'll have new things to report and updates. Get into this. Just a real quick snapshot of where we're at. We now have 11 licensed peace officers, 7 of whom are full-time officers. We have 3, I guess you could consider them reservists, and then we have 1 part-time officer. Our police officers are still augmented with unarmed security officers. I will say that our unarmed security officers, the ones we have right now, are the best batch I've seen since I've been here. And from talking to people who've been here a lot longer than I, they say that they're the best batch we probably ever have. I mean, they're absolutely amazing. One of them is going to be starting the police academy next month. Another one of them has already been through the police academy. Yes, ma'am.
The unarmed security officers, are they included in that total count?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We have about maybe about a dozen
Okay.
unarmed security officers. But, yeah, we have one of the other ones has actually graduated the police academy a few years ago and decided that being a cop wasn't for him and he just wanted to be a security officer. So I was like, come on. We're now, I'm pleased to report we're at 100% of our staffing levels where we're supposed to be. That's the first time we've been able to achieve that since I've been here. We have all of our positions filled, both administrative and sworn positions. And that means we finally have the time and personnel to do the stuff that I've always wanted to do with this department. I want to introduce you very briefly to a couple new hires. On the left is Sergeant Eric Villanueva, who just started at the Wise County campus. Kristen speaks very highly of him, and so do I. I think he's going to be a terrific addition out there. He really has a passion for this, and he comes with deep connections to the Wise County Sheriff's Office, which will only help us build our relationship with them. On the right is Candace Crawford. She's our new police office specialist. I requested and was allowed to expand that role of our administrative person. She comes to us with prior experience working at the Parker County Clerk's Office, as well as the Office of the Office of the Attorney General, and she really knows her stuff. Excuse me. Pre-existing measures, just real quick. This is what I covered last time. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it this time, but I want y'all to know that all this stuff that I talked about last time, we're still doing it. We're still training regularly with WPD. We do quarterly scenario-based simulation training with them. We had to put a pause on that briefly because they were moving into their new facility and they weren't doing the training. But now it's picked up again, and we just recently did a session with them. We should have another one around the end of the summer. Alert, Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. That's kind of the standardized training that started in Texas and is now spread across the country. But it's kind of the standard tactics that you use to respond to an active shooter. All of our officers have now had some version of that training. Some of them haven't had the version that I want them to have, and some of them haven't had the latest, greatest version. But in the wake of Uvalde, all of a sudden, everyone in the state was trying to get this training at the same time. So we're catching up, and WPD is doing a great job of trying to get ahead of the curve on that, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. Student interactions are still the best tool we have at our disposal to mitigate and prevent this type of stuff. If our officers are out there having a deep relationship with our students, we're going to hear things that we wouldn't otherwise, and maybe hear the one little bit of information that allows us to prevent something like this. So we're still doing all the stuff I talked about last time. We still have officers eating dinner with the students in the cafeteria every week. I'm still encouraging our officers to get involved beyond just walking around. I'm still co-sponsoring the anime club. Yesterday, me and Tom Murphy cooked dinner for all of our Upward Bound students and had a great time. So we're still doing all that. I came up with this motto actually a couple months ago and was in the process of pushing it out to our people when I was asked to give this talk. And it's really simple. It's 5 little words, but it describes what our focus is going to be for the next academic year. And the motto is more visible and better prepared. It's kind of an anticipated future state that I want us to get to. The more visible part, visible presence of uniformed officers makes our faculty, staff, and students feel safer and serves as a deterrent to anyone who would attack the college. So part of that in this upcoming fall semester, in the past, one of the complaints, the few complaints I got, but one of the ones that I actually feel was legitimate. People would come to me and say, we don't see enough officers around campus. And unfortunately, I hate to admit it, but I'll agree with that. We haven't had enough officers visible just walking around campus. And there's reasons for that. The biggest one is what I mentioned before with the staffing, and we also had some administrative challenges that basically forced Dee Dee Perkins and I to stay in our office a lot more than either one of us wants. That's going to stop. For the first time at the start of a fall semester, we'll be fully staffed, and I've challenged Vern Higbee, Dee Dee, and I are each going to spend at least 1 hour a day dedicated to doing nothing but being out there, being visible, and talking to people. We're going to time these patrols so that we have at least one of us out there during what I call morning rush hour, between like 8 and 9 when all the students and stuff are arriving, and we'll probably do one at lunchtime as well, and hopefully that'll help give the perception that there's more cops here than people currently have the perception of. More visible as well on evening shift. For the first time since I've been here, we have 2 very committed and motivated evening shift officers. That's Lauren Foster and Thomas Murphy. I assigned them to that role deliberately because they both have a real passion for building deep relationships with students, and they'll be the ones who are primarily interacting with our students at Coyote Village. Murph is an institution here. He's been here for 14 years. He started as a security officer with us. He went through the police academy last year. Lauren Foster is a prior student resource officer at a high school, and she just loves, both of them love talking to people. So they're going to be hopefully a lot more visible and a more visible presence at Coyote Village than we've had in the past. So the second half of that, we had more visible, then we're going to start spending the rest of the time talking about being better prepared. Having more officers and having them prominently displayed is fine, but if they're not actually ready to do anything, they're just window dressing. So I came up with this little math formula. It's the only math in this presentation, I promise. Proper equipment plus intense training plus strong partnerships is how we get to readiness. I'm going to talk about what we're doing in each of those areas real briefly. Proper equipment, we're updating some of the equipment we have in the budget that hopefully y'all will be voting on shortly. We'll have new and modern AR-15s with state-of-the-art optics. When I got here, we had a couple of old surplus AR-15s from the 1980s, and then the first time we took one to the range for a training class, one of them literally fell apart in the officer's hands, so we recognized that was a problem. We're getting 2 AR-15s at the main campus with optics, and we're getting one at Wise County because they didn't even have one. Additionally, we're starting to issue out heavy armor plates. These are plates that are designed to stop a rifle round as opposed to just a pistol round. They go on over the body armor that we normally wear on a day-to-day basis. You may be asking, well, why don't you just wear it all the time? And the answer is because those things weigh about 30 pounds, and it's just not feasible. Breaching tools, we currently didn't have any. I've written those into the upcoming year budget as well. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but the one on the left is for getting doors to open towards you, and the tool on the right is a battering ram that pushes doors in. So we'll have both covered because we have both types of doors on the campus. It's not just limited to like tactical police equipment. We're also getting updated radios. Currently, the radio that I'm carrying, we inherited surplus from Weatherford PD, I think over a decade ago, if I recall correctly. And there's places on this campus where I can't hear the dispatcher, and if I try to talk on it, she can't hear me. So obviously that's a problem. Also, all the agencies around us are updating their radio system to, I'm not a tech guy, but it's eventually these will become completely incompatible with all the other agencies around us. So the new radios we're getting, they're obscenely expensive, but we really don't have any choice other than to buy them. But they will fix both those problems. We'll be interoperable, we'll continue to be interoperable with all of our partner agencies, and also we'll be able to hear and transmit from everywhere on campus. Lastly, as far as equipment goes, I'm going to mention these Stop the Bleed kits. I've included that in our budget for next next year, campus-wide, on both the Wise County here, even on our 4-H property and, the rodeo practice area, we're going to have these Stop the Bleed kits. Everywhere there's an AED, there will be a little container containing one of these Stop the Bleed kits as well. These are more than just a first aid kit. They're specifically made to control heavy bleeding. They contain some specialized equipment such as occlusive dressings and tourniquets, and I'll get to how we're going to train on those a little bit later, but that's a big improvement. Getting to the training portion of this, when I say intense training, I mean it. We are going to train, I would predict, and I would bet that maybe with the exception of like a SWAT team, our officers are going to spend more time training than any other agency in Parker County. I'm comfortable making you that promise on an officer-by-officer basis. Alert training and the scenario-based training with WPD will continue. As I mentioned earlier, WPD is trying to get ahead of the curve and expand upon alert. I don't give Austin PD a lot of credit for stuff very often, for those of you that know me talking about my previous agency, but I will say that Austin was actually ahead of the curve on this by about a decade. We were doing this in Austin from at least 2012 or so, but basically it expands on the regular alert training to create rescue task forces. What a rescue task force is in the wake of an active shooter incident, once the shooter is put down, but before the casualties have started to bring out, you form these rescue task forces, which is a combined group of police, fire, and EMS, and they go in together and start extracting people out. People think that most of the deaths and stuff occur during the initial shooting phase of an active shooter. That's mostly true, but you also lose lives in the immediate aftermath if the scene isn't run properly. And Weatherford PD is going to start doing their first drills combining the 3 rescue services, fire, police, and EMS next week, and we'll be assisting with that. For the first session, we'll actually be assisting as role players. Everyone from our department, or a lot of people from our department, are going to do that, and I put an email out yesterday to the rest of campus if anyone who wants to volunteer to sign up to be a role player for that exercise. But in future exercises, we will actually be participating as law enforcement, going in and working directly with not just Weatherford PD, but with the fire department and EMS as well. More intense training. Every single officer in our department is going to go through a formal AR-15 class. The AR-15 is a terrific tool, but it's a little more complicated than a pistol, and using it is a lot more complicated than a pistol. And it came to my attention that even though we've had these rifles in our office for a long time, a surprising number of our officers have never actually been through a training class. They may have gone to the range and shot one, but they've never been formally trained on it. So that's going to stop, and we're going to fix that. More training. All 3 of our sergeants recently attended a tactical leadership class that was actually hosted by the Rome Police Department at our Wise County campus. They were all very impressed by the training they received. And this is a basic, it's kind of like I mentioned before, how lives are lost not just during the shooting phase, but during the follow-up phase. This teaches our supervisors how to handle the follow-up phase. Where do you put your command post? What do you do? How do you get EMS in and out? Who do you need to call? None of them had had that training before, to my knowledge. I was fortunate enough to receive that type of training several times in Austin. And lastly, and probably most importantly, shooting is yes, ma'am.
Quick question, sorry to keep interrupting.
No, you're
but
fine.
on these trainings, do you integrate any of your nursing teachers to help with the triage situation, to help with Stop the Bleed, to help with, showing where the AEDs are, stuff like that, and pulling them in with these trainings as well?
We haven't been working very closely with our nursing staff, and that's probably something we need to look at doing more. Now, on our emergency management committee, we do have some representatives from health science. We've also, speaking of Stop the Bleed specifically, that training is going to be delivered by Samantha Grimsley, who is our EMS Academy coordinator. So we've been kind of working more closely, I'd say, with her than we have with our nursing department. But in talking to our nursing department, in fact, I did talk to some, I forget who it was, over there about Stop the Bleed specifically, and I was surprised they basically taught me that stop the bleed isn't something that all nurses are trained in, but all paramedics are. So that's why it kind of made more sense to have Sam do it. Plus, she's taught it before. But we're going to offer that to all of our faculty at some point. And I'm sorry, I'll get to that in a minute. But I guess to answer your question, yes, we do consult with our nursing folks like we do all of our other departments, but we're not specifically working with them maybe as closely as we should on some of this stuff. Does that answer the question? Okay. So back to the firearms training, as I was saying, monthly shooting is a perishable skill. Just like anything else, if you don't do it regularly, your skills decrease. In the new budget, I've basically doubled our expenditures on ammunition, and what that will allow us to do is every month our officers will be allowed to be issued a box of ammunition and go to Lone Star Guns across the highway and just practice their marksmanship. The last thing I want is for us to have an active shooter and our cops not be up on that skill. It's one of those skills, you don't need it until you need it, but when you need it, you better be good at it. Intense training, it's not just for the cops. All of our PE personnel are now trained in CPR, including our security, our bus drivers, and even our office staff. The CRACE training that we've been doing for the last 2 years on a kind of a come if you'd like to basis is now going to be included in our faculty in-service at the start of the fall semester. CRACE stands for Civilian Response to Active Shooter Events, and we have a wonderful instructor from DPS who does such a great job that I considered trying to teach the class myself, but he does such a great job, why mess with something successful? But that's going to be offered to all of our faculty as part of their in-service, so hopefully the majority of them will go through that. Stop the bleed, as I was discussing earlier, it's going to be mandatory for all of our people, but we're going to make it available to everybody. And I'll make sure it's also available up at the Wise County campus as well. Yes, sir.
Did you say earlier that not all have been trained on the Stop the Bleed kits? That you're going to be doing that?
Yes, sir.
So
actually,
when would that be completed?
when will it be? Well, for our department, all of us are going to be completed on it, I hope, by the end of the summer before we even have the kits. But it'll be offered to the entire campus in the fall semester.
But for your personnel, it'll be soon.
It'll be soon, yeah. We don't actually, most of us have been trained, we haven't been through the actual Stop the Bleed kit training, but we've been trained on most of the components that are in there already. So all of us already know how to apply a tourniquet. All of us already know what occlusive bandages are for. We just haven't been trained on this specific kit. We haven't been through the 4-hour class.
How about oxygen?
We don't carry oxygen.
So that's not part of,
No, sir. It's not part of the Stop the Bleed.
are your AR-15 semi-automatic?
We don't have them yet, but yes, they will be.
But none of them are automatic?
No, sir.
Okay.
And actually, I don't want to get off on a whole thing here, but for law enforcement applications, you usually don't want an automatic weapon because you're responsible for every round that comes out of that barrel. And I'd much rather have our officers have semi-automatic weapons. Tabletop exercise, at the end of July, we're doing well, it's not our first ever. I've been told we had one a long time ago. It's our first since I've been here, but we're going to have a tabletop exercise. It's actually going to be a hazmat exercise this time because that's what we have ready. But in the future, I anticipate we'll probably do an active shooter one. But it's a tabletop emergency simulation that's going to pull in all of kind of the key players on campus that will walk through how to handle an emergency. And we're just going to talk about things like where are we going to put the command center? What does this department need to do? How are we going to get all these resources? But it'll be the first time that not just our department, but other players around campus will all be playing together to walk through it. an imagined incident.
Quick question on
Yes, ma'am.
tabletops.
Yes, ma'am.
How many do you foresee having in the next year? Are you going
Right
to do it
now,
on a
we-
quarterly basis? or-
I'm sorry?
Are you going to do it on a quarterly basis?
Quarterly, I'd like to do it on a quarterly basis, but I think that's probably overly optimistic. We only have the one scheduled right now for July. I'd probably like to see it on a semi-annual basis where we do it a couple times a year.
What's the duration of your tabletop? Is it a
This one's
day
gonna
or
be-
is it an
No,
hour?
it's going to be, I think this one's scheduled for about 2.5 hours.
Okay, I'd really like to see it quarterly and a little bit, maybe a half day, because you can run into a lot more scenarios. I'd also like to see more integration with community. You know, having your hospital people to know what to expect, where to take. You know, you've got 2 fine hospitals that you're going to need to call in a major event. I'd like to see some, at least you know who to call
Yeah.
on that kind of thing, and we know who to talk to, and I'm sure Medical City would like the same. I would recommend, we are mandated to have it quarterly, and I would love to see y'all look into that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, just, I'm going to be as candid as I
Sure,
can.
absolutely.
We have to kind of walk before we can run. We are hoping, my goal, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, but my goal is to build us up to where we're doing not just a tabletop exercise, but an actual simulated drill
Sure.
eventually that will include not just us, but our partner agencies, EMS, fire, the hospital district, the city of Weatherford. That's the eventual goal we want to get to. But because we're starting from the bottom, we have to kind of build up. So we're starting with a real simple tabletop exercise just involving us. And then as we keep going, we'll keep building on the intensity and the frequency of those events until we're getting to where I think we all want us to be.
And how are you incorporating communication to students and faculty? How are you training them to know what to look for when a crisis arises, so there's not panic on the campus?
Well, so that's part of our CRACE training that we do. I also taught a class, I teach a class every spring semester. It's just on general personal safety stuff, but we cover those topics. Also through our Campus Cast alert system, we try to get, if we do have an emergency, we try to get those messages out quickly and what people should do so they're not just running around aimlessly panicking. It'll say something along the effects of shelter in place, do this or do that, get off campus if you can in an orderly fashion.
Do you have scenarios so people can practice? I think it's great to give instruction. I guess what I'm asking is, do you have scenarios where kiddos will know what to practice, and memory is a muscle.
Yeah.
It's just, that's all it is. Memory is just a true muscle, and it's got to be worked out a lot. And when you've got panic intervening, you lose a lot of muscle.
Well, and right now, really the only formal instruction we have on that is the CRACE training, which is, I mean, it's great. It's a great class, but we can't make our students attend that. If I could make every student on this campus attend the CRACE training, I would do it in a heartbeat. And it does cover exactly what you need to do in an emergency. I mean, that's the entire class.
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but when you talked about earlier about
That's
having...
why I'm here, so.
Yeah, when you talked about having more presence, I would wonder in those times when you eat with your students, if you have little informal sessions on that, so maybe to draw some student attention to, your police officers that are dining with them, so they just don't sit there and wave at the guy eating his hamburger, but you actually have kind of a semi-program, and maybe that will draw some attendance. And you could also get your EMS and maybe your nursing people just to do a very, very informal, very casual, light discussion. I think you get a lot of student participation in something like that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we actually did try something like this past semester.
Okay.
And I wish I could tell you it was pretty successful, but I invited, I had our local DPS officers, I had the sheriff's office and Weatherford PD. One of our professors had started a program called Ask a Professor, where every week they would have a table of professors that would sit in the lunchroom, and people could just come up and talk to them and ask life questions or anything they wanted to ask. So I thought, why don't we do that with cops, and that'll get us, talking, and we can, talk about these, not just active shooter, but anything. And I wish I could say it worked. But unfortunately, I mean, I have to admit, it wasn't successful.
How catchy
because
was your title?
it
How
was-
long was your promotion?
It was only that one day. But yeah, we had one student that came up and talked to us, and it was about the trooper's hat. So I wasn't real happy with how that worked out.
Yeah.
But there's definitely
It's just
more we can
marketing, I
be doing.
think. I think you'll get better attendance with marketing.
Okay. Well, I will say we extensively market our CRACE training, and we've had decent attendance. I mean, there's usually between 20 and 40 people that show up, and we've even had people from outside the college, like out in the community that have come. So I'm pleased with that. We're going to continue that, but I'd like to build on it.
I just don't want Weatherford College to be another Uvalde situation where we look like we don't know what we're doing. We're going to
Yeah.
have a bad situation someday. It's going to happen, and I just want y'all to shine.
Well,
And I want our kids to live.
I certainly appreciate that, ma'am. And you know, the way I look at these shooter situations is when the first shot rings out, it's already a bad situation.
Exactly.
And the outcomes go from, on a spectrum, from really bad to a total
Horrific.
disaster like
Mhm.
Uvalde.
Yep.
And I don't operate on the assumption that we're never going to have one of these incidents. In fact, the opposite. I
It's gonna happen.
operate on the assumption that we are going to have one of these incidents.
Well, she brings up a really good point about getting this out to students. And have you tried a mechanism where there are many organizations that these students belong to? Various interest groups, various clubs, and so on. Have you reached out to them to make that a part of their programs to?
Well, our honors students, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain issue up here. Phi Theta Kappa, they did a partnership with us on the CRACE training a couple years ago. It wasn't terribly successful, but we did have some additional students that came to that. We've also, I've certainly mentioned it to our anime club kids every time we do it, but student apathy is a problem. And unless I mean, I wish I could tell you that I could get these kids to attend. I'm certainly open to trying any suggestions you guys have as far as outreach. But
Let's start with the sports teams. They kind of get voluntold to do so. So let's get the rodeo team to start, and you start with the rodeo team, then you start with the baseball team, and because those guys got to be there if coach says this, so you're going to have an
There's
audience.
social clubs and hobby clubs, a lot of mechanisms like, what would you say that you need, not maybe specifically for this particular subject we're on right now, but what would you say that you would need to speed up and to enhance the training of your folks that the administration needs to provide for you?
when you say our folks, are you referring to our department employees?
Yes, and educating the students.
Well, it's kind
What
of.
do you need from administration?
It's two separate things. What I have for my folks, it's easy. I tell them what to do and they do it, and they can like it or not. Most of them like it, and we've been very successful with all of our training. For the students, it's a little different. What I would recommend, honestly, we do core, they call it Coyote Online Registration Experience. I think as part of that, the most efficient way to get all of our students trained in this stuff is include an hour of this CRACE training in core. And they're already here, they're already spending the whole day here. That would get all of them through as before they even set foot on campus. That's what I would recommend. But
And that
that's
would
going
only,
to take a
and
lot
you
of.
think that would take how long? Did you say an hour?
The class is an hour, and it's a very.
Might be
that-
made part of registration, I don't know. So that aside, though, what do you need that you have, that you need more of, besides time?
Well, you know, honestly, time is the biggest thing, but I will say in front of everybody, everything I've asked for, I've gotten. As far as support, both, political support as well as financial support. Some of the equipment that I look to acquire in the future is rather expensive. And so I'm starting with the most critical stuff first. But there is some stuff I'm going to be asking for in the coming years. I'm not going to ask for everything all at once because I'd rather do it piece by piece. It makes more sense financially, and it gives us a chance to train and familiarize ourselves with our new equipment as we acquire it, rather than getting a bunch of new stuff all at once and not knowing what to do with it. So, no, I will state publicly and for everybody that Dr. Farmer, my boss, Brent Baker, and the entire board has been nothing but supportive since I've been here, and I sincerely appreciate that. I'm going to talk a little bit about partnerships with other agencies. We're building on existing relationships and we're starting new ones. We have good relationships already since last time I talked to you with WPD, Parker County SO, and our local DPS office here in Weatherford. However, we're working on building partnerships with DPS in Wise County, as well as the Wise County Sheriff's Office and Bridgeport PD near the WCWC campus. I met Sheriff Aiken for the first time a few months ago. He brought several of his deputies out there for a walkthrough, which I'll talk about in a minute. And so we're building those relationships. We have a really good contact at Bridgeport PD, and they participated in that as well. I want to mention real briefly something called the Fort Worth Intelligence Exchange. An intelligence fusion center is basically, it's a physical thing, but the physical fusion center itself isn't the important thing. It's what it does. And if you see that map there on the left, that shows all the counties that are involved in this new fusion center that's based out of Fort Worth. And basically it's run by the FBI and the Fort Worth Police Department. And it ties into all the other fusion centers around the country. But this is something new that we previously didn't have in this area. So every law enforcement agency in one of those counties on that map is invited to join this fusion center. And it's basically an information sharing organization. They're just getting it up and running, but they're already putting out bulletins. They asked for someone to host their quarterly meeting for all these agencies, and of course I volunteered us. So in this very same building we're in, at the end of this month, we'll have representatives from at least 24 law enforcement agencies that are meeting here to formally share information. The biggest thing we get out of this Fort Worth Intelligence Exchange is now, say, in Comanche County, some Comanche County sheriff's officer gets a tip that, hey, this is really weird, but I heard this guy out here in Comanche County is saying he's going to shoot up Weatherford College. Now that person can literally go onto that website and pull up my personal cell phone number and give me a phone call right away, instead of having to call our office and then, well, Chief Big isn't here right now, he's out talking to the board. My phone in my pocket will ring and I can pick it up and they can say, hey, we need to talk. So it's a pretty big deal. And also it gives us all of the intel from the entire Regency of what's going on, not just with active shooter threats, but with gang activity, terrorism, you name it. More joint training. As I mentioned before, DPS teaches our CRACE classes. They do a good job. Why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to? We still do our quarterly training with WPD, and when we do our alert training, it's by necessity with other agencies. WCPD is working with the Law Enforcement Academy to host more formal law enforcement classes on all of our campuses. I mentioned earlier that class that Rome PD hosted at the the Wise County campus. At the end of the summer, we're going to be hosting a TASER instructor school on our campus here, just to do as much as we can to get more law enforcement agencies on our campus and familiar with our facilities. As I mentioned before, all of this is building up to the ultimate goal of having large-scale, multi-agency active shooter drills
Have you
on this
set a
campus.
timeline when you want to get that goal?
As fast as we can.
What does that mean?
I wish I could. I'm not going to sit up here and say we're going to do this by this time next year, because I don't think that's realistic. There's too many factors that are unpredictable and beyond my control that, you know, if you want to pin me down on a time, I think, you know, hopefully.
I think it's good to have a goal date.
I think a reasonable goal is probably 3 years from now to have a large-scale, multi-agency active shooter drill on this campus.
I think that's unacceptable.
I'm edging on the side, I'm giving you a cautious number. I can tell you, we're not gonna be ready to do this in a year. We're not. But we're gonna get it done as quickly. What I can promise you is we're gonna get it done as quickly as we can. But we have to start small and build up from there. We're just not ready to do that yet. But we'll get there, and we'll get there as quickly as humanly possible.
So what would it take to do it in a year? What do you need for us to happen to do it in a year?
Well, we'd probably have to do some of those baby steps a lot quicker. We'd need to, like you suggested, do those drills quarterly. And we'd have to have basically the will to tell everyone on campus, this isn't an option. You're going to do this, and it's going to be every quarter. And I think if we want to make that the goal, to have that going by next summer, if you tell me that's what you want me to do, I will find a way to get it done.
I just don't think we have the luxury of good luck for 3 years.
No, I don't disagree with that. We may not have the luck to wait until next week. Unfortunately, we don't get to choose when these events happen. We just have to do everything we can to try to prepare for them. I did want to talk a little bit about law enforcement walkthroughs. I wish I could take credit for this one, but it actually came from the Parker County Attorney's Office. They suggested that we host a walkthrough event, and they did this for not just us, but for every high school, middle school, elementary school, and even the private schools in Parker County. They did a walkthrough event, or organized walkthrough events, where every law enforcement agency in Parker County was invited to come and tour our facilities. The event was so successful that I decided we were going to do it annually, and it was so successful that we replicated it successfully at WCWC, and we invited Wise County Sheriff's Office and Bridgeport PD and several other agencies to come and participate. And it's just a chance for the agencies to come here. They have an all-access tour of all of our facilities. They see all the ins and outs, know where everything is, so that if they do have to respond to an actual incident here, they'll already kind of know the lay of the land. They'll know us by face and name, and we'll already have that relationship going.
Don't you share diagrams of the buildings
Yes, sir,
with all
we do.
the agencies?
In fact, my understanding is that, like Weatherford PD, for example, on their desktop computer, or their mobile
Right.
data terminals, they can just pull up all of our facilities diagrams, and I provided them with our most current ones just about 6 months ago. So in closing, what am I doing to prepare for an active shooter event? Everything I can think of. There's no such thing as being ready for this type of event, and my focus is on constant improvement. I can't promise you that this time next year we're going to be perfect. It's like turning an aircraft carrier. You can't corner like that. It takes a little while, but the goal is constant improvement. And even when we get to the point where I'd like us to be now, where we're doing those large-scale interagency drills, we're still not going to be ready. We're never going to be ready. We can just keep getting better and better and better. That's my report. Does anyone have any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you search for drugs and maybe guns and things like that? How do you keep it a gun-free, drug-free campus?
Well, again, we do everything we can. There's always going to be bad actors, bad apples in the bunch that are going to try to smuggle weapons and drugs on the campus. I'm pleased to report, as far as weapons go, we haven't had a significant problem with that since I've been here. We've had, that I can think of, 2 incidents on campus where we've had a weapon problem, and we took care of both of those very quickly. And again, it goes back to our close relationship with our student body, which is our best tool. In both of those cases, it was tips from students that led us to those guns that weren't supposed to be on campus. Drugs is kind of a little bit different. Unfortunately, I mean, we are a college. Any college is going to have some level of that activity, but I'm pleased to report that from talking to other police chiefs, our problem here is a lot less significant than it is at a lot of other campuses. We basically, we have pretty good kids. Pretty much every semester when the school year starts, every fall, we try to set the tone early, and during their dorm orientation, let them know up front, these are the rules. This is what's going to happen to you if you break the rules, and if you break the rules consistently, you will get caught. I think that some of us, it takes them, within the first weeks of a semester, we usually kind of have an idea of who may be doing that type of thing. Sometimes it takes us a little while to catch them in the act, but honestly, most of our RAs and even the students themselves at the dorm are pretty good at letting us know when that type of stuff is going on, and we've been very successful in interdicting both drugs and weapons on this campus. But no matter how many we get, every semester there's going to be new people that want to bring them on, and it just repeats the cycle. Yes, sir.
Have y'all considered anything like the Guardian, I think it's the Guardian program that Weatherford ISD uses, where they arm teachers?
Well, we already have armed teachers here.
Okay.
I don't talk about it very often, but I know we have several armed instructors here. They follow the license to carry rules. License to carry rules are a little different here than they are at a high school.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really need a Guardian program to allow our instructors to carry weapons. By law, my understanding is I can't ask our faculty which of you is an LTC carrier and is carrying a weapon, but several of them have approached me and said, hey, just so you know, I'm an LTC carrier, and I know we have both faculty and staff that carry regularly here.
Chief Big, I'd just like to say that I think you've done an excellent job since you've been here. The things that you've implemented are all right on point, and I know that you and your department know what's best and the timeline that you need to do it, and I just appreciate everything that you've done so far.
I appreciate that, ma'am, and for all of you, we really are doing everything we can. I will never come up here and lie to you and promise you something that I can't deliver on, but we are doing absolutely everything we can.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you addressing us today.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next item on the agenda appears to be announcements. Mr. Baker, do you have anything for us?
Yes, sir. We do have some upcoming events. We have a Shakespeare production that begins this weekend and actually runs for 2 weekends, The Tempest, in the Alkek Fine Arts Center. I know they're working hard on that. We have a children's production as well in July 8th and 9th. And then our second summer begins on July the 12th.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baker. Item number 9 is closed session, and I will close the open session at this point. The board will enter into a closed session meeting. All the members are back. By my timepiece, it's 3:59 PM. We've ended our closed session. We're back in open session once again for this meeting. We're down to item number 10 by my reading, consideration and possible action on real property. There is no action to be taken with regard to item 10 today. Item 11, consideration and possible action, appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. And likewise, there is no action to be taken on that item. We're now down to item 12, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
I so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All
Aye.
in favor? I believe it's unanimous. We are closed.